One of my favorite series on this channel is Video Games You Should Play Today, which was a retro game style video where I talked about a bunch of retro systems and games for them that you should play today or that are worth playing today. And I love those videos a lot because I am a big retro game fan. It's part of why I'm such a big fan of video games in general, is the games that made me a fan of video games. I do love modern games and I love retro games, so I want to do more retro games on this channel, and that is what I plan to do. I am bringing the series back today, but I am going to be making a big change to what the videos are going to be about, because in the first videos I did games that are worth playing today, but I decided to make a little change today, and for the rest of the videos moving forward, I'm going to be focusing on this style of video, which is video games that you should be collecting if you're planning on starting a collection of a specific console in 2023. When starting a collection though in 2023 of any retro game system, you're going to find that it is pretty decently expensive to buy a lot of games, because a lot of games are going to be a lot harder to find and a lot of these games are going to be more expensive. Just a reminder though, before we get started, yes, these are my opinions and my opinions alone. Some people's opinions are going to differ, and that is okay. I love everybody having their own opinions. So if you do not agree with the video games I suggest for a 2023 collection of Nintendo DS games, in the comments below, tell me what games you think people should start collecting when they are starting a collection in 2023 of the Nintendo DS. But without further ado, let's jump into today's blockade list with 10 Nintendo DS games you should be collecting in 2023.
When it comes to our first game, Super Mario 64 DS is a remake of the 1996 N64 game of the similar name, except they upgraded the graphics, added more playable characters, collectibles, a multiplayer mode, and several extra mini-games. What made Super Mario 64 DS unique to me was getting to play through the game with characters outside of Mario. In total, you have access to Yoshi, Mario, Luigi, and Wario. Super Mario 64 DS is a 3D platformer, and you can switch between all 4 different characters and play all levels with whoever you want. The main task of Super Mario 64 DS is to collect the Power Stars, which can be done by completing tasks on each world. Each level is enclosed into paintings that once you enter, you will work to complete a variety of tasks to obtain stars, such as defeating bosses, solving puzzles, racing an opponent, and gathering coins. Once you collect enough stars, you unlock another level. Super Mario 64 is an upgrade to the most memorable game in the 3D series, and honestly, I like playing this version more than the original. If you are starting a collection for the DS, you have to have this amazing remake of the N64's best game. There are so many great Mario games on the Nintendo DS, and honestly, out of all of them, I would definitely be prioritizing one of the best games released on the DS, Mario Kart DS. Mario Kart DS is a racing game in which you race karts against other racers as one of the 12 characters from the series. In Mario Kart DS, you have access to Mario, Luigi, Peach, Toad, Yoshi, Donkey Kong, Wario, Bowser, Daisy, Drybones, Waluigi, and Rob are all playable. Only 2 karts are initially available for each character, but you unlock more over time. The DS uses both screens perfectly, as the top screen has your third-person perspective of the racer's kart, while the bottom covers the current race standings, items carried by the racers, and the map of the course. The DS also introduced Bullet Bill and Blooper for the first time, and those abilities have become a staple of the series. Mario Kart DS is by far one of my favorite games in the series, and I spent so many hours on this game when playing the DS. Even with newer games in the series being available, the Nintendo DS collection is not complete without Mario Kart DS. If you're collecting Nintendo DS games in 2023, you cannot do that without one of my favorite games, Nintendogs. There are several different versions of this game that featured a different breed on the cover, but my favorite was Nintendogs Lab and Friends. Nintendogs uses the DS touchscreen where the owners can play with, train, pet, walk, brush, and wash a virtual dog. The game also utilizes the built-in microphone where the player can call their puppy or teach the puppy tricks. Money can be earned by placing in competitions or selling items at the secondhand shop and can be used to purchase supplies, puppies, and home decor. Dogs can be walked and can be taken to the park where they can practice disc catching skills for disc competitions and to the gymnasium to practice dog agility for agility trials. Only 3 dogs may be kept at the player's house at one time, and up to 5 dogs can stay at the dog hotel, where dogs can be swapped, dropped off, and picked up at any time. The player can also choose to part ways with the dog by donating the dog to the hotel. As time passes without dogs being cared for, its conditions will slowly deteriorate as it becomes more hungry and dirty. Nintendogs features a variety of contests, which are the player's main method of earning money and trainer points. There are 3 contest types, which is disc competition, agility trials, and obedience trials. But just as a quick reminder, dogs do not die in this game. You cannot have puppies, or does the dogs age. But overall, Nintendogs is just a fun experience that is seriously unique to the DS and 3DS era of Nintendo games, and Nintendogs is just honestly one of the most enjoyable experiences. One of the most popular games on the DS is GTA's Chinatown Wars, which is an action-adventure game set in an open-world environment. It has a different presentation from previous games in the series by partially resembling the first Grand Theft Auto titles. Instead of a ground-level view behind the protagonist or a top-down perspective, Chinatown Wars uses a fully rotatable camera angled down at the action. Chinatown Wars also uses cel-shaded polygons with black outlines to produce a comic book-like aesthetic, a first for the series. Unlike Grand Theft Auto 4, the players can lose wanted stars by destroying police cars to escape the police instead of leaving a wanted zone. The more stars a player has, the more police they have to take out for each level. There's also drug dealing subplots which allow players to peddle heroin, acid, ecstasy, marijuana, cocaine, and depressants around the world. Just like other GTA games, it includes a story mode. In Chinatown Wars, you follow a young Triad member Huang Li in his efforts to recover a sword gifted by his late father after it was stolen from him, while inadvertently becoming caught up in a power struggle amongst Liberty City's Triads. The story and gameplay of this game is extremely fun, and it is an experience on the DS that is so unique, and it is a must-buy. Another fantastic DS game is the mini-game compilation party game WarioWare Touched. In WarioWare Touched, you will rapidly be completing micro games, which are simple mini-games lasting extremely short periods of time as quickly as possible. The micro games are exclusively controlled by the touchscreen and microphone. The game uses the same type of gameplay as in the past WarioWare titles. The player must complete micro games, a variation of mini games. The player is given brief instructions before each micro game, such as find, rotate, or shoot. Beating a micro game results in the game continuing to the next one, while losing causes the player to lose a life. If 4 lives are lost, the game ends at a game over, with the player's 3 previous highest scores being displayed. The game speeds up as it progresses, and after every 15 points scored, the player must complete a boss stage, a longer, typically more difficult micro game. WarioWare Touch introduced touchscreen and microphone controls to the WarioWare series. All micro games can also be completed with each of the 2. The game also has 180 micro games, not including the boss stages. WarioWare Touch is just a fun game that I could spend many hours on and is worth collecting in 2023. Animal Crossing is one of the most popular series made by Nintendo, but one of my favorites in the series was the DS title Animal Crossing Wild World. Wild World focuses on you living in a remote village populated with anthropomorphic animals, where the player character is encouraged to perform any number of tasks, things like collecting items and planting. Animal Crossing is an open-ended game, and you have just moved into a village where you are the only human. Animal Crossing Wild World is connected to the time clock and the calendar of the DS and features a lot of daytime and nighttime changes, and snow will eventually fall during the cold months. Different events occur at particular times of the year, such as holidays, and the variation of collectibles depending on the month or season will also change. In Wild World, you can customize pretty much everything. You can modify your player's clothing from a variety of clothing options and accessories. You can also design new clothing patterns from scratch, and the environment itself can be modified, like trees can be grown or chopped down in any part of the village. And the players own a house that they can be able to furnish and collect furniture and items that they want to decorate their homes with. You can spend so many hours in this game, and because of how open-ended it is, you can spend time doing whatever you want. Our next game is Final Fantasy IV, which is is a faithful remake to the original Super Nintendo game, but has been updated to have a gorgeous 3D art style and a better feeling experience. Final Fantasy IV DS retains the original active time battle system, but the remake features a new ability system known as the Augmented System, which has certain character-only abilities that can be transferred to other characters. Also in Final Fantasy IV, the DS version, they have added mini-games that are played using the stylus. The function of these mini-games is to increase the power of Eidolons, but the story in this game, I will say, is very similar to the original game, but because they have upgraded the graphics and have given us amazing cutscenes, the game just feels like a completely different experience altogether. The combat is turn-based. It requires you to use magic, attacks using swords and other weapons, using items to heal up, boost damage, get rid of status effects, revive your characters, and much more. You also have access to summoning Eidolons, just like many of the other games in this series, and if you're looking for a perfect way to play the older Final Fantasy games, the DS versions of Final Fantasy 3 and 4 are amazing. Final Fantasy 3 is also an amazing remake for the DS that features several of the upgrades to the gameplay, story, and experience. So honestly, if you're looking for a good RPG for the DS, any of these two Final Fantasy games that you can play are amazing choices. We've made to the final 3 games on the DS that you need to collect and play in 2023. This next one is yet another Mario game, but this is considered one of the best games in the series as it has tried to be so faithful to the original Mario games, but revamping it for a modern audience. The game, of course, is New Super Mario Bros., which is the best-selling game on the Nintendo DS and one of the best-selling games of all times, which is partly why there have been many sequels to this series since that have spanned the Wii, 3DS, Wii U, and Nintendo Switch. New Super Mario Bros. Is a side-scrolling game that features a 2D look that uses 3D character models on a 2D background. The player has a choice of controlling rather Luigi or Mario, and of course the controls are just like any 2D Mario game, except for New Super Mario Bros. Have added some of the 3D game moves, such as ground pound, triple jump, and wall jump. Each of the 8 worlds within the game features 8 to 12 levels each, which are shown in the bottom touchscreen of the DS. The goal of each level is to make it to the end of the level facing difficult obstacles along the way. At the end of each world, just like in most Mario games, there is a boss fight that is required to be beaten before you can move on to the next level. There are 6 power-ups available in New Super Mario Bros. 3 power-ups from the Super Mario Bros. Series return, such as the Super Mushroom, the Fire Flower, and the Starman. 3 more power-ups, though, have been introduced in New Super Mario Bros., which are the Blue Koopa Shell, the Mega Mushroom, and the Mini Mushroom. This is a perfect 2D Mario experience on the DS, and by far is one of the best games on the DS in general, and I recommend it for anyone collecting DS games. Outside of the last game we are going to talk about on today's list, Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass is by far one of the best games on the DS and is one of my personal favorites. For those that are not aware, Phantom Hourglass is a direct sequel to GameCube's Wind Waker and has another sequel called Spirit Tracks also on the DS. Now I will say Wind Waker is still my favorite game amongst this series, but Phantom Hourglass is the best game on the DS when it comes to Legend of Zelda. The game features 3D cel-shaded graphics with an overhead camera perspective that employs controls using the touchscreen and microphone. The game's story follows that of Wind Waker, focusing on the series protagonist Link as he journeys to save his friend Tetra from the story's antagonist Bellum with the help of Captain Linebeck and his ship, the SS Linebeck. The gameplay is similar to the other games in the series as you control Link and explore the world, finding new items, information, and allies to help save his friend Tetra from the enemies of the game. While on land, Link discovers and utilizes many items, including the classic boomerang, bow, and bombs, but when sailing, the game shows a map of the area on the DS top screen and a 3D top-down view of Link and his nearby surroundings on the lower touchscreen. The player can bring down the map from the top screen to the lower screen to make notes. During certain events, including most boss battles, a 3D view is shown on both screens, allowing the player to have a wider view of the surrounding obstacles. Phantom Hourglass is just an entirely fun experience that gives you a full-length Zelda game on the handheld DS that just feels awesome. The Wind Waker Saga is one of my favorites, and this is one of the best of the sequels, and is a game that is a little pricey as well, but worth it. Now, if it was not obvious, the most important games to collect on the Nintendo DS, and is probably the most expensive games to collect on the Nintendo DS, is that of the Pokemon series. The Nintendo DS has so many games in the Pokemon series that you have a variety of choices. That is why I'm talking about all of them today, because you cannot go wrong with any of them, and you should be collecting all of them as long as you can afford it. The Nintendo DS had the introduction of both the 4th and 5th generations of Pokemon, with Pokemon Diamond and Pearl and Platinum, as well as Pokemon Black and White and their direct sequels, Black 2 and White 2. Then, of course, you have the second generation remakes of Pokemon's Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Pokemon games are some of the best games in my opinion, and the DS era had some of my favorite games. Heart Gold and Soul Silver is by far my favorite because it features Pokemon walking beside you, and it takes place in the Johto region, which is my favorite generation of Pokemon. Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, you cannot go wrong with any of those games because they have such an amazing roster of Pokemon to choose from, and the world and graphics look so good compared to the games before them. And of course, Black and White is a real large reintroduction to Pokemon that gives you 150 plus new Pokemon to use, and is probably one of the most ambitious titles in the Pokemon series to try and introduce as many Pokemon as they did since the first generation. And also, they were the first games to introduce direct sequels that showcased the same world as the first games, but showcased them changing and evolving over time with new gym leaders and a reintroduction to some of the characters from the first game in the series. But all the DS titles have the same look, but as each game releases, they have updated the sprites, environments, and new features. Most of the games play similar to each other and have a similar game mechanic of turn-based RPG and fighting gym leaders and so on and so forth. But if you're a fan of Pokemon, you cannot go wrong with any of these games, but keep in mind that they will cost you a pretty penny, especially Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver.
Well, that was it, guys. That was all 10 Nintendo DS games that you should be collecting in 2023 if you're starting a Nintendo DS collection, or if you already have Nintendo DS games, these are my recommendations of games you should be picking up if you haven't already. This is just my opinion again, so if you don't agree with me, that is perfectly okay because the world is better when we all have different opinions. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel because I make video game content every single week. Thank you all. I will see you all next time. I'm going to get back to playing some games. See y'all next time.